Hello, everyone. I'm Nakhle, the Psych Safety and Consulting Lead at Cosmic Centers. Welcome to another episode of our webinar series, Psychological Safety in Focus. Psychological safety is the belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. Cosmic Centers is the region's exclusive official partner of the Fearless Organization SCAN, a research-backed tool for measuring psychological safety, and their Arabic language partner. Through this series of webinars, we are shedding light on what it means to foster psychological safety at the workplace. Today, we're exploring open conversation, one of the 4 domains of psychological safety and one of the strongest predictors of learning, collaboration, and good decision-making. Most organizations say they value open communication. They encourage employees to share ideas, raise concerns, and speak up when something isn't working. But how easy it is really to do that? Can people challenge a decision made by their manager? Can they raise the concern before it becomes a problem? Can they share difficult feedback without worrying about how they'll be perceived? Because when people don't speak up, organizations lose more than ideas. They lose visibility into risks, mistakes, concerns, and opportunities that would otherwise help them perform better. To unpack this topic, I'm joined today by my colleague, Hadeel Kabosh. Let's give Hadeel a minute to join. She's here. Hi, Hadeel. How are you?
Hi, Mary. I'm good.
So for our conversation today, actually around open conversation, one of the 4 domains of psych safety, I would invite you maybe to share with the audience first a definition. What does it actually mean to have an open conversation in the context of psychological safety?
Yes, so open conversation is really about the extent to which people in a team feel safe to express what they really think, especially when it's a difficult conversation. This could mean, are they able to challenge ideas? Are they able to disagree openly? Are they able to raise a concern? Are they able to give honest feedback? And generally, when it comes to psych safety, there's a myth that it means there's absence of conflict. But actually, we like to say that conflict is good. And as long as it's constructive and leads to productive discussions, it's good to have conflict within the team. And the research actually shows that in teams where members feel safe to express their different opinions, they can actually perform 20% better than teams that avoid conflict. So really at its core, open conversation is about whether we feel safe enough to have these difficult conversations with the intention of improving team dynamics, whether it's collaboration, productivity, effectiveness of the communication within the team. And the more psychologically safe a team is, the more they are able to have these conversations and have them early, honestly, and be more productive. And actually, as you know, Mary, the Fearless Organization SCAN allows us to measure this. So we can see to what extent within a team they have this ability to have these open conversations. So Mary, maybe you can tell us more about how this domain is measured.
Totally. So as you may know, that the Fearless Organization SCAN is the tool that helps us measure psych safety across 4 domains. We've already covered inclusion and diversity. We talked about willingness to help last week or the last episode, and now we're covering the 3rd one, which is open conversation. And the question in the SCAN that is asked here says, members of this team are able to bring up problems and tough issues. So people would answer on a scale from strongly agree to strongly disagree. And this question doesn't measure only whether communication exists. It measures whether candor exists, so whether people are saying what they really think, especially when there's an interpersonal risk involved. So it's important to note that a high score on other domains like willingness to help or inclusion and diversity doesn't always guarantee open dialogue. So we've covered these 2 domains before. They might sound as if there's an overlap with open conversation, because willingness to help is about saying that I feel comfortable asking for help, and then inclusion and diversity is about feeling that I can express a divergent opinion without being rejected by the team. But actually, what this domain adds to this insight is that even if we may feel supported or welcome in our team, we could still hesitate to voice disagreement or challenge authority. And we'll unpack this together today, Hadi.
Yeah, I think this distinction is really important, the piece about bringing up a problem or a tough issue. So it's not like, oh, we're just having a chat or we're able to talk about a project update, but it's specifically when there is, as you said, an interpersonal risk involved. So we can be in an organization or a team where we have a lot of, say, meetings, we have a lot of discussions. It might seem lively and everyone is participating, but how do we distinguish between communication and genuine open conversation with this definition that psychological safety provides?
Yeah, totally. As you said, like if just because people are speaking up or are talking doesn't mean that they are saying what they really think. So a team can be highly collaborative and still avoid difficult topics. Actually, in teams where actually there's like good human connection and maybe some friendship, people might hesitate more to talk about tough issues or to give feedback to each other. So some indicators that we can talk about that are practical for a leader or a team member to see if open conversation is not where it should be is that we don't hear people saying enough I see this differently, or I disagree with what you said, or I think we're missing something. I have a concern about this decision. So these show worry about the consequence of a decision or of a like a communication, etc. And then it also shows that people are thinking about what you're saying and not just saying yes and agreeing. Actually, today I was in a conversation with a partner consulting company that we love working with. And the partner there told me when I leave comments on a deck, let's say I leave 20 comments, and the consultant working with me will just like do and adjust all the 20 comments without coming back with a question back or pushing back on a change. Like I
Mm.
know that this person is not really speaking up or is not taking ownership or just wanna like don't want to disagree with me. So that's one of the practices where you see like, if everyone is agreeing to something all the time, it means that we don't have a culture of open conversation.
That's a great example. In our team, we also always push team members to challenge and to have their own perspective on things and like not just take feedback as is, but they might always have another opinion that is worth discussing and bring it up. Thank you for that example.
Yes, and actually, it's a bit risky for people, right? Like, no one wants to feel maybe rejected or maybe have like hear a feedback that they don't want to, let's say, receive. So it does feel risky, right, Hadil? Like people don't necessarily default to speaking up as a natural behavior.
Yeah, for sure. It might feel like, especially for example, if you're giving feedback upward, that you're challenging authority or you're
Totally.
damaging a specific relationship. We're big on relationships and this sense of harmony in this region. You might not want to be labeled as the negative person or the tough person or the troublemaker or someone that's always like bringing the negative aspects of things. Um, and yeah, so the example you gave was a good one. And I want to offer another example where, for example, you're giving upward feedback. Like imagine your manager has a habit of making decisions without consulting the rest of the team, and you can see how this is affecting the morale and the execution across the team. And you want to bring it up to improve the situation for everyone. But this also means that it could influence your performance review, your opportunities, your career progression. So you have no idea how your manager will take this. You don't know if they're going to see it as constructive feedback or you wanting them to grow and having like good intentions in mind, or that you just want to challenge authority, and you don't know how that's going to affect your relationship as well. So when people aren't confident that a difficult feedback will be received well, many can choose silence over counter.
Yeah, totally. I agree. And we always say it we in our trainings that feedback can be a gift, um, especially when it's delivered in the right way. So if you don't give feedback to another person, it means that you don't care that this person improves or if they perform better next time. So there are some signs, maybe for a team, that they are struggling with open conversation. I know Tala left a comment in the chat about, let's say, in a culture like we are afraid, as you said, Hadid, before, like we don't want to be seen as the troublemaker or the problematic or the dramatic person in the room. So, what are some signs that the team is actually struggling, but also how can we, let's say, we'll talk about solution in a second, but how can we sense these indicators in order to implement the right solution?
Yeah, so you mentioned a few with your examples. So when you notice that there's very little pushback, whether during meetings or while giving asynchronous feedback, there's little pushback from the team, and no one disagrees with a specific decision or with a specific, say, like way of working or a specific feedback on the work. And there's also, again, this idea of like groupthink, where like a certain decision is just received with immediate agreement from everyone. And also from like a manager or leader perspective, it could feel like, this kind of heavy load, the decision is always on them and no one else is kind of like being consulted or even just bringing up the discussion. It's always good to talk out loud of a specific decision. And they feel like no one's contributing. It's just on them the whole time. It could also be another example, feedback happening privately most of the time. Like if you don't have psychological safety within the team, you would always take feedback on the side, on a one-on-one conversation. There's this phenomenon called the meeting after the meeting, where like during the meeting, everyone is agreeing, but that the real meeting happens after. And this is where you start sharing like maybe your disagreements on a more private setup. So there's a lot of these signs. I don't know, Marie, if another one comes to your mind that I have not mentioned, but there's always these signals that people may be withholding information, withholding their concerns, and yeah, like it may seem that there is just alignment within the team, but actually there's a lot of hidden red flags.
Totally, I agree. And I think in our workplaces here in the region, a lot of that comes from our relationship to hierarchy. So some people may perceive challenging a decision or an idea a disrespect to hierarchy. And I think Matt also mentioned that in his comment. It's like we need to understand that disagreement doesn't mean disrespect. And in many organizations here around the region, we see people coming from different cultures and different, like they are brought up in a different way, and then they have a different maybe relationship to hierarchy, which makes it harder even for them to challenge ideas and disagree. We also see the hippo effect, which is the highest paid person's opinion in the room. Actually, the latest global report that was published about psychological safety by the Freelance Organization SCAN studied the relationship between psych safety and the hippo effect. And the question was if employees believe that ideas matter more than hierarchy in their team, or the opposite. And actually, what they were able to see is that actually the hippo effect cut cut psych safety in half, because the score were people who answered that employees believe that ideas matter more than hierarchy had 86 as a psych safety score, and people who answered the opposite, meaning hippo effect or the hierarchy matters most, had a psych safety score of 41, like even like more than double in terms of the psych safety score when it comes to a healthy relationship with hierarchy. So hierarchy is important. It is very much existing in our region also, but that doesn't mean that we are disrespectful if we want to voice a different opinion, right? And there's also other like things that influence um, the will to have open conversation and to challenge. Hadeel, maybe you wanna give us another example?
Yes, for sure. And like on this topic of our regional realities and nuances and how it impacts psychological safety, the Erin Meyer culture map, it's a framework that we love referencing. So basically, it's research that it's a model that you develop based on years of research, and it looks at 8 dimensions and how our culture impacts how we show up at work across these 8 dimensions. And one of them is conflict style and how we approach disagreements. And actually, in our region, mostly we are very conflict avoidant. And it's because we have this, other than the respect for the hierarchy, we also, we're big on relationships, as I mentioned earlier. We value harmony and preserving these relationships. It might mean that culturally we are more inclined to avoiding conflicts, while other cultures, for example, France and Italy, I remember, were on the far, the other far left of the scale, where they're actually, they bring up issues up front and they're more comfortable with confronting and disagreeing. So this is another example of how our culture can really impact how our ability to bring up these tough issues at work.
Totally. I so much agree. This is a tool that we use a lot and we talk about a lot, because if we understand why someone is acting the way they are acting, and it's mostly not personal to us, it's really related to their culture, the way that they think and they interpret behaviors. It really makes it easier for us to find a common ground and a common way of doing this. But the question really is here, like, why should we care? Like, why should organizations focus on improving their speaking up culture? And that is something like we can maybe unpack a little bit. You talked a bit in the beginning about the impact on team performance, that teams who speak up perform like 20% better, and that has been proven by research, than team who don't have a speaking up culture. So, and I think here the obvious cost of this is first the poorer decision making, because we have less information, right? Less data. So our decision making is going to be affected. Another thing is the mistakes that are going to surface late, and it's going to be too late actually to intervene. So people will maybe will not express their concerns, or maybe things that they see that might not work, and that will lead to us being late to react. Also, on another level, it's the innovation piece, because if we don't invite more opinions, and we don't have a collective kind of a collective brainstorming or reasoning approach, and it's only the ideas of one or two people in the room, then we are sure to miss a lot when it comes to innovation and being creative with our ideas. We always talk about collective intelligence in the room and how much it's important, because people bring different perspectives. So all of these are good. It's clear that it actually has an impact and a cost on things that really matter for a company to thrive and to sustain, because no company can sustain without innovation, without risk taking, without good decision making. And speaking up affect all of these three.
Yeah, for sure. I want to resonate with what you said about bringing these issues up early. Like, I think that's really, really important. And it's not just about having the information, but also surfacing it early enough that you can act on it before it's too late, and before the impacts are more expanded.
Totally. Actually, I want to go and I'm going to talk about this a bit further and take it to another level, because actually the impact of not speaking up can be even more dangerous because in some industries like the healthcare, because it's been something that is a lot on our mind, and we all know that the research that Amy Edmondson started on psychological safety actually started in healthcare. And the finding there was that actually not speaking up with errors or mistakes that happen in a hospital during a surgery will lead to impacting patients' lives and safety. So the impact of not speaking up in certain industries have high stakes, like more than, let's say, a bad decision that was like made here or there, or like we missed an information. It can lead in some industries to a big risk on people's lives, for example. And there's like a story while we were meeting leaders from the healthcare industry last week in Saudi, talking about how we can implement better healthcare systems that like integrate psych safety. There was a story that really affected me when a doctor we met told us about a case that happened where a patient with diabetic, like the DKA situation, he was admitted to the hospital. And in that case, like any physician would know that there's like three things that this person needs. They need to be prescribed with insulin, fluids, but also electrolytes. And the thing that happened there is that the physician did prescribe insulin and fluids, but missed on the electrolyte. And the nurse that was with him at the time noticed it, but she didn't speak up. She thought that the physician maybe knows better. She didn't want to take the risk of maybe sounding intrusive or ignorant or arrogant or whatever. And like that led to actually this person or this patient condition deteriorating. And I think at this point that the patient died at the end. And then this also shows up that a culture where people are afraid to speak up for whatever reason could lead to really dangerous results. So it is important in some industries or more some sectors. Maybe it's more impactful than others, but in all cases, we know that the impact is there.
Yeah, thank you for sharing the healthcare example. And we actually recently learned a new term, the second victim effect, that it sometimes doesn't just end with the life of the patient, but it also could impact the staff or the nurse or whoever it is that was in charge so bad that they also take away their own lives. Just to like really, there's this the scale of this is really big, especially in specific industries that are more human centric, as you said, whether it's healthcare or aviation or construction related. So yeah, thank you for sharing that example, Mary. So Mary, we talked a lot about why people don't speak up and why they should. I want us to also like share with the audience a bit of solutions that we can think about. So what are some of the leadership behaviors that make open conversation more likely in a team?
Yes, so one of the biggest mistakes that leaders sometimes make is assuming that their people are bringing everything up to them, or they naturally speak up. Like I've met leaders who would say to us, but I have an open door policy. Like my door is open all the time. So they expect or they assume that people feel safe enough to come and speak up. Actually, in one of the, I think 2 years ago, when the global research, the yearly global research of the Spheres Organization scan took place, there was a data point that shows how leaders have always a better perception of psych safety of their teams than the team members, because not everything is resurfaced to them. So in reality, leaders need to actively create these opportunities for people to contribute. Something as simple as sharing meeting agendas in advance can make a huge difference, because when people have time to reflect before a discussion, they're more likely to come prepared with questions, with concerns, with a different perspective. This is especially important, let's say, for people who are more of a reflective thinkers or more of an introverts, so that they might need a minute in order to formulate their views and like feel comfortable in what they're saying. Other leadership practices, including asking what is missing. So what did I miss there? So also as a leader, role modeling the fact that it's not, if I'm the leader, it doesn't mean necessarily that I know everything. So inviting diverse opinion before making any decisions. A good practice is also, let's say, for the leader or the highest paid person in the room to speak last instead of speaking first in a meeting. So to allow for people not to be influenced and agree with what he says. Also rewarding behaviors related to challenging ideas or surfacing a concern. Always inviting the devil's advocates in the room. Like these are ways that the leader can shift the image of someone who disagrees. So to go back to what Tala said in the comments, like from being a problematic or a dramatic person to being the person who's the devil's advocate or who always knows what's gonna go wrong and show it as a added value to the decision making process or to the conversation. So these are good practices that a leader can have. But it's not only on the leader's shoulders, and we're gonna talk about this. Like it's a practice that everyone in the team also can embody, right, Hadeel?
Yeah, and this actually reminds me of the leadership value that is unique to our region that Marilyn mentioned in her TED talk, all about leading with an open heart, which is this idea of consultation or shura in Arabic, where it's part of our kind of culture that a leader walks into a room and they listen to everyone else first, like they invite everyone to speak first. So really, leaders need to kind of embody this kind of behavior more and more, and invite people very openly to speak up, and also, like making it a norm or a culture that it is not them that has all the answers. There
Yeah.
is always, as we said earlier, power in collective wisdom. And regardless of hierarchy, someone else in the team might have great ideas and might help in making decisions. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful concept. And maybe then I can drop in the chat the link to Mahalin's TED Talk. Like it shows how leaders from our region have a lot also to teach in terms of the rituals that we have and the way we view leadership, as you said.
Yeah. And Marie, as you started saying that it's not only on the leader, we like to say that psychological safety is a team concept and a team effort. Like everyone needs to contribute to creating this kind of environment. And the most effective teams don't leave it to chance. So they intentionally create the rhythm, the way of working that allow for open conversation. One of the rituals that we like is retrospectives. So having that within the team's cadence, and a retrospective is basically a dedicated space where you reflect on not the project, but the way of working, the way of collaborating. And you really discuss what has been working, what has not, what should be done differently. And there are many ways to structure these retrospectives. The one we love is called the Start, Stop, Continue framework. And the meeting needs to be designed in a way that really allows everyone to contribute. So one of the things, for example, that we like to do is to send the agenda beforehand and make sure everyone comes prepared with their reflections. And during the meeting, making sure you are going around and asking each person to share either a start, a stop, a continue in whatever framework you're using, but going around the room and having everyone share something. Another example is creating rituals that really help teams to get to know each other on a personal level. And for that, we have actually a prompt card game just for this called Cosmic Conversations. And maybe Zena would be dropping the link in the chat. It's just a way to really build connections with the team, create a sense of cohesion, and get to know each other better, both professionally and personally. And we often like to start meetings with this kind of just to break the ice and instantly create that more comfortable environment, in the hope that everyone will be more comfortable sharing more and participating actively. Marie, do you have any favorite team rituals or practices for encouraging open conversation?
Yeah, actually, there's a lot. There's one I can mention, and I've seen one of the CEOs we work with having these coffees with the CEO rituals where they invite people to ask him anything during these sessions. And I think the format and the context that it's a bit less serious, maybe encourage people to be less, let's say, nervous about these conversations, and just start to build this habit of them being able to openly ask questions, and like develop this culture internally. These also can be done between team members and colleagues. Doesn't need to be like, I know Fatin, who used to work with us, used to do that all the time. She would put for us like 15 minutes of coffee time in our calendars, just to be able like to talk about everything and anything. And these conversations sometimes are more valuable than the ones we have in a meeting, because like we have this more relaxed, let's say, setup to discuss things. So yes, a lot of rituals, and we've seen like how rituals in general improve psychological safety. And our research that we've done with Dr. Connie Hadley, we've seen that team rituals, especially the ones that are performed in a consistent way, actually increase psych safety scores to the extent of like 20%, because they create these forums and these setups that makes it easier for people from all different kinds of personalities and perspective, because it makes it less about them and more about what we're here to achieve together as a group. So yeah, rituals are always a great way to improve psych safety in all the domains.
Yes, and this makes me think of another one that we always encourage leaders to do, is to have a one-on-one conversation on a regular basis. We do it monthly. And it's a space to like not just wait for the performance review, whether it's in 6 months or an annual basis or whatever, but to really give each other feedback. And as you said earlier, feedback is a gift. And we have a lot of frameworks for this. One of them is the CDAR. There's also the RIDGE framework for sharing behavioral feedback that allow you to really structure how you give your feedback in a way that doesn't feel awkward or too negative. So yeah, we would also share these resources with everyone watching. So of course, even the best leaders and teams can struggle if the wider organizational kind of system is sending a different message and is not creating those conditions for psychological safety. So if we talk about the organizational level, what are some system level kind of ways of working can encourage more candid conversations?
Yes, totally. So, and for us not to be relying on individual initiatives, let's say, or specific leaders who establish these behaviors around them. And in order to make sure that this is incorporated at the culture level, at the system level, you know how we always say like the organization is a system, and it has different components. In our omnichannel org framework, we talk about the pillars that consist the system, which are the structure, the processes, the controls, the culture, the people, the strategy, and all of these contribute, and the improvements that we make in order to integrate these in the system could be at all these different levels. So rituals is a great example to implement and encourage this conversation at the system level, not only within specific teams or with specific leaders. Another way to make sure that we have these checks in place in order to see how we're doing, and make sure that the system is allowing for these conversations, are like some listening tools that we can implement. So on top of the previous organization scan that measures psych safety across all the domains, we can also send specific pulse surveys where we can really measure specific behaviors that we want to like have data associated with at the level of the company, especially if it's an area of focus for us. In terms of like trainings and upskilling people on feedback, as for example, like the one you mentioned, Hadeel, it's a great skill to master when it comes to establishing a good two-way conversation. So it could be rituals, it could be measuring mechanisms, it could be training and upskilling. All of these are interventions that could be done at an organization level to foster a good open conversation and psych safety in general.
Yeah, and speaking of these feedback channels, there's a question from Leah in the chat that I want to bring up. I'm curious to know if anonymous feedback channels actually help psychological safety, or can they sometimes prevent direct conversations from happening?
It's a great question, actually. So anonymous channels are very valuable because you know that people feel trusting to say what they really think. So encouraging open conversation, especially when trust is low in a team, or it is a new practice to the organization. So people are not used to do these like run these surveys or have these conversations. So it could be a good way to get started on establishing this culture. So the psych safety scan itself has an anonymous version and a version that is not anonymous. So depending on how how trusting people are, or how the culture or the psych safety levels in this company, we can choose to go anonymous in terms of the surveys. But it should be viewed like as a bridge or as a way to encourage transparency. But ideally, the long-term goal is to create an environment where people feel comfortable enough to be raising concerns directly. Because if people only feel safe speaking anonymously, it means that psych safety is very low. So maybe a good starting point and a great way to collect the real data, ideally, but then also encourage direct feedback and encourage other channels that show that we invite the direct feedback, that we invite, and that people are not going to be punished or treated differently if they voice any concern.
Yeah, and I think it also depends on the situation. Like, for example, in our context of like knowledge industries, you can't wait for that anonymous channel. Like sometimes feedback needs to be more prompt and more real time. And as you said, we ultimately need to build that kind of culture where people feel safe. Like they don't only rely on the anonymous channels because they don't always work. Like in certain situations, it needs to be quick and it needs to be more direct.
Totally. And I see Razan also asking like a follow-up question in a way, because she's asking how often we run these surveys or checks. So on the psych safety level, we like a lot of companies fear this survey fatigue. So they don't want to send too many surveys because people end up not answering, or just like answering with like strongly agree, like whatever, just let me get through this. So ideally, there's a good rhythm to the amount of surveys we send during the year. Our advice is always to have one encompassing survey like that we send on an annual basis, and then maybe shorter pulse checks that help us monitor some trends or some key KPIs for us or key behaviors during the year. These are not too long. Like they focus on the most like areas that are a priority for us, but they allow us not to react too late. So if we don't measure enough, we could get the data too late, and then we can see that, let's say it's maybe too late to intervene on some of the things. So a good balance between the two is great. Also, always like having quantitative and qualitative feedback being measured all the time, because quantitative alone is not enough. And I would say, actually, I would want to add like the importance of this of having the data. There's one data point that was really striking in the global report that we discussed maybe 2 episodes ago around the quitting thought. And because the question that was added to that survey at the time was if you are planning to leave your job in the next 6 months. And then when they compared the psych safety scores, they saw that people who had the intention to quit had half the psych safety score than people who didn't have an intention to leave. So that's first great indicator to your workforce engagement and their willingness to stay in their jobs. So if you catch that too late, then it's too late to do anything anyway, because people have already quit, like in their mind and the way they are behaving, they had already quit before they actually do it. So that's quite dangerous for a company, and then that's why measurement is important and a good frequency is important.
Yeah, it's quite an early indicator, and I think it's important to also distinguish between what psychological safety measures versus other kind of surveys. So, because we often hear, why aren't we getting this data from our usual engagement survey or our well-being survey? It's really important to distinguish between these three. So, psychological safety really measures how the team is behaving and how well they're working together. And while it could be linked to engagement related metrics like turnover rates or intentions to leave, but it's a different type of measure. So it's important to make that distinction.
Yeah. There was one question, maybe we can take a couple of more questions from Sabah about where we should focus first in terms of the solutions, like leaders, team habits, or systems. I don't know, Hadeel, if you have an answer for that. My answer would be all three all the time. Like as we said, like
we're quite holistic thinkers. We don't like to take
totally. Yeah. Agreed. Like we cannot improve one node and not the other. The leaders are good because they role model, but also they drive a bit the culture more than maybe, and they have more influence more than other people. But also having the good team cultures, the training and the skills that are needed to nurture this culture of speaking up and psych safety is important. And then having the systems, because also in terms of policies, incentives, performance reviews, like all of these systems that we have in place are also important to make sure that we are like having the full, let's say, intervention. And then because, and this is something that was said to me last week when we were meeting with the healthcare sector in Saudi. And it was about, we can talk as much as we want about nurses and like encouraging them to speaking up, but if HR policies don't protect them, then they will never do it. Like you can say whatever you want, but if they feel that the policies are not written in a way that protects them, then they will never do it. So it's the three together all the time. And in the assessment that we do, we look at all these components. So as I said, through our omnichannel organization framework, and we identify the areas where we feel there's an improvement to make in order to make sure that this effort is holistic enough.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, like we look at the organization and the system, different parts of it can still impact psychological safety. I think it's important, like in terms of like where we start, to start with awareness and then get into the capability building piece, because there's a lot of misunderstandings and myths about psychological safety, and the concept is still not well known. So it's important to start with more awareness, letting employees know what it means, what the value of it is, and what it sounds like in practice, and then to start building the capabilities either at a leader or team level.
Totally, I cannot agree more.
I don't think we have any more questions.
Yeah, I think we've answered all questions.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think we've explored like what makes open conversation possible. Today we've deep dived into what it means and what are the signals and the signs, and then what are solutions that we can implement. But the question is like where to start. So ideally, we start by measuring. We start by understanding the culture, by running these checks. we see where we stand, and then we go from there. Hadeel, maybe you can talk to us a bit about the global research effort that is being made available today for companies, especially in our region.
Yes, so the good news is the global research is now active and the participation to it is open. It's a research that the Fearless Organization Scan does every year, and it's open to organizations worldwide. It allows you to measure psychological safety within your organizations for free and benchmark it against other organizations and even industries around the world. So really the one requirement for you to join this is to have a minimum of 60 employees within your team to be able to participate. And out of it, you would get a report on your psychological safety levels, but also a comparison to all of the other organizations participating in this research.
Totally. I think Zaina is going to drop in the chat all the links if anyone, any company or any person wants to know more about it. Happy to provide all the information. And I think that's it for us for today. So thank you all so much for joining us. If you'd like to get deeper on the topic, also don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter, follow us on our channels, and keep an eye for the next session. We still have one domain to cover, and we have a few speakers lined up. We'll continue announcing these webinars as we go. And you can also go to our YouTube playlist and check all the previous episodes on psychological safety in our region. Thank you again for being part of this journey with us. We look forward to learning, growing, and building more psychologically safe workplaces together. Thank you.